I want to lead with this morning. Everybody's enjoying it except for, the media, where some media people have taken shots at it. The latest is Mike Sealski, who writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Big column yesterday, which a lot of sports writers said, hear. You are so accurate. Sports writers know more than everyone, and I'm glad you're unveiling the truth. Oh, boy. The headline here is The Last Dance. Michael Jordan shows us who he really is. Yeah, it's a documentary. It's not a movie. It's not fiction. Michael is showing us who he is, which is awesome and competitive and relentless and feisty as hell. And sometimes he can be a little mean, scary. So are hedge fund guys. So are politicians. So mean happens all the time. In his opening paragraph, it says it's become harder to separate the entertainment and nostalgic value of the series from Jordan's agenda. Not really, not for anybody. 6 million people watch every week and everybody loves it. From his desire to preserve his legacy, imagine that, settle scores, and rub his status and greatness in the faces of his real and perceived rivals. One in particular, Jerry Krause, the Bulls GM for 18 years. Has served a convenient function throughout The Last Dance. He's been the series' primary source of narrative tension. Yeah, because the overwhelming story of The Last Dance is the tension. That's why it's called The Last Dance. You do get the entire series is about this season. And they go back and pluck different dramas and controversies throughout the course of Michael's greatness. But it's called The Last Dance. And it's called The Last Dance because the Jerry Krause GM here who you're defending, who has passed away, rest in peace, told Phil Jackson, 82-0, I'm not bringing you back, to break up the greatest dynasty ever. The entire documentary is called The Last Dance, which is what Phil wrote on a binder and gave to the team before the season because he told them, I'm not coming back. Let's call this The Last Dance. So yes, the tension that Jerry Krause created is the title of the documentary. That's why there is narrative tension centered around Jerry Krause. That's what the story's about. So that's what they keep talking about. And Jerry created that. By the way, the writer also says there is something cheap and unseemly and quite telling about the inclination to continue bullying a man who isn't around to defend himself. No, Michael was tough on Jerry Krause when he lived. So why should he be inauthentic and lie? Sports writers are looking, some of them, for soft, happy endings to this. Or a new Michael. Michael has been completely authentic. He hates Isaiah. Did then, does now. Doesn't back away from it. Michael Jordan, business first over politics, then and now. Doesn't back away from it. Michael Jordan, gambled then and now. Doesn't back away from it. Critiques of Jerry Krause. Ripped him then, rips him now. Sorry, this is not a movie where the great villain learns about himself, and by the end of the movie, he's a better person. That's called a movie. This is a documentary. Documentaries are supposed to be real and authentic looks at the primary story. Jerry Krause was going to blow up the best team ever. Now, it may have been Jerry Reinsdorf, as Charles Barkley said yesterday. Very may well have been Reinsdorf's mission to be cheap, but Jerry Krause was such a insecure, as this writer does point out later in his article. Jerry was insecure. He was a kid that got picked on. He could never get over it. Steve Kerr acknowledged during this, and Steve Kerr's a nice guy. He's like, I was there. Jerry Krause couldn't get out of his own way. So when I read these articles about this is unveiling a new Michael, no, it's not. It's delivering the exact Michael. Everything I thought about Michael before, I think about him now. I think he's relentless. I think he's great. I think he's incredibly competitive. He's intense. He's an alpha male. And if he didn't like you, he'd confront you. He didn't back away from Isaiah. He didn't back away from Jerry Krause. He wasn't passive aggressive. He didn't have a burner phone. He'd go right after you. And that's why we love him. So this is not a movie. The Americas made their mind up. They like Michael more than an insecure general manager who may have been, in his private life, a wonderful guy. But there were so many missteps by Jerry Krause. Telling Phil Jackson, 82-0, you're not back. Can you imagine if Bob Myers had told Steve Kerr that going into year before's win for the Warriors? Let's not make Jerry Krause a victim here. Everybody in this documentary has come out just like we thought. Now, I do think Phil Jackson, who I had a great deal of respect for, I've got even more for him now. I'm like, there's so many spinning plates. I always thought Phil was the best coach in the NBA I'd ever seen. Now he's the best psychologist in America and the best coach. So I do think I all this stuff with Phil, I've kind of been blown away by his balancing act of Rodman and Krause and Reinsdorf and Pippen, and it's his maturity and his emotional discipline has blown me away. Everybody else is landing exactly as I thought. In fact, I didn't ever cover the Bulls directly. I wish I would have. I know people that did, and I've had people on that did, but I didn't cover them directly. But you didn't have to be a Bulls insider to know Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf were not ideal, that Michael and Pippen and Phil were often working against them. And that's been portrayed. That's not bullying. That's not cheap. I mean, if I struggled with somebody my entire life in my career, thank God I haven't. But if they do a documentary someday, and it will be low budget if they did on my career, I would tell you exactly what I felt then and now. I wouldn't soft pedal it. If I didn't like somebody, there's a couple sportscasters I don't like. I don't like them now, and I tell you later, yeah, I didn't like them. That would be. Now, if you gave the script to Hollywood, they'd have a happy ending. But that's not what we're doing here. I think it's been a great documentary. I think sometimes when they go back in time with the dates, it's a little confusing for me as a viewer. I think some of that is Jason Hare, the documentarian, who I had in my podcast last week. The guy is rushed. They literally started this thing, airing it, and they weren't finished. They're still editing it. I mean, they're not done with this thing. It's a rush job. It is. They don't get nearly as much time. You don't want to start a documentary, start airing it, and you haven't finished it. That's just not the way it works, right? You want it done, you get production finished. But this idea that this is, we're all struggling with how brutal and ruthless Mike is. I don't think anybody I know is struggling with it. I think it is absolutely, I think I respect Michael more because he's not a BSer. And maybe we're softer in society. Maybe we're all more evolved now and we should be nicer. But it's funny. Fans say, and the numbers illustrate, people used to like the NBA more in Michael Jordan's era. It was tougher. The players were older. They were veterans. And research shows people liked him, and people still buy more Michael shoes than LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant shoes combined. But part of that, I don't think the media really quite gets, we like the alpha. Like, I love the fact that Michael won't back down from his gambling, his Isaiah hate, his Republicans buy sneakers too, and calling out the management. That's part of what I like. I'm not struggling at all with it. It makes me like him more. Because I for years and years, people said, you're an MJ hater. And I'm like, no, but he's not perfect. This is what I said on the air for years. I know a lot of guys that covered Michael. He's not perfect. And you know what we're seeing during this documentary? He's not perfect. He's real. Michael is real. He can be a real pain in the butt. He can be real vindictive. He can be real petty. He can sometimes be real mean, but he's real. And I'll take that every day of the week instead of the social media posturing I see from everybody else. J.A. Adonde was on earlier. I just love having him on. Former reporter for the L.A. Times and the Chicago Sun-Times, covered MJ and Kobe. He said something during it. He defended Michael Jordan on not taking a political stance, and he said, would it have mattered? And this has always been my takeaway to people in my profession. I'm like, who are you trying to... You have no influence on sports. Forget politics. I have a massive audience. It's debatable if I have any influence in sports. You think I have influence on politics? And people go, well, celebrities in Hollywood give out endorsements and they mean nothing. How do I know that? Because none of them endorse Joe Biden and they all hate Trump. And that's who's running for president. They all backed Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke and Mayor Pete. They all had endorsements. None of them were Joe Biden fans because he wasn't cool and lit. He wasn't trendy. He's old and forgetful and comfortable and not cool, and he's running for president. So the idea, Hollywood endorsements, and they're generally way more politically engaged than sportscasters. Hollywood endorsements mean nothing. I've seen people torpedo their careers in my field with political stuff. Michael Jordan's like, what's the win? What's the win on this? The idea, LeBron in Ohio had no impact. Endorsed Hillary. She lost. So, I mean, if LeBron James in Ohio can't have impact, boy, that tells you something, right? People have made their minds up in America. Conservatives watch Fox. Liberals watch MSNBC. You can't change people's minds anymore. You really can't. So I mean, even reasonable people now, we've all made up our minds. You like Trump or not. You're not going to, somebody that doesn't like him is not going to like him. Like, it's over. If you've already made your mind up on Trump, you're in it or out. And you're not going to move any of those people. I always consider myself to be an independent. And I've already made my mind up. He wears me out. Okay.